He was always the quiet one, never spoke unless called on, sat near the window, never ate, never typed on school devices. But now, years later, a classmate says he watched Barron Trump access something no student should have had clearance for. A terminal with no login screen, a device with no manufacturer. And what played on that screen was enough to make him disappear for 72 hours. No phone, no trace, just silence. Until now. Oxbridge Academy wasn't on any official government list, not the kind that mattered. No flags, no alerts, just a $30,000 a year fortress built on elite discretion. But behind its manicured hedges and marble staircases, one operation was quietly unfolding, a surveillance protocol so classified it had no digital footprint. At the center was Subject 47, height 6 feet 9 inches, codename Sentry Ghost, known to the world as Barron Trump. He arrived in 2017 under full Tier 7 embedded clearance, granted jointly by the Executive Protective Division and an unlisted branch of JSOC Intel Services. His entry wasn't logged through traditional enrollment. The only record of his presence was a cipher buried inside a dead server farm in Langley. Every morning, Eagle 9 team, plainclothes agents embedded in faculty roles, ran proximity sweeps. His locker was biometric sealed. His textbooks arrived via secure pouch. There was no ID badge, no traceable schedule. The mission? Integrate without integration, observe without engaging, and above all, protect the access point. What access point? That's where it gets complicated. Oxbridge housed a dormant DARPA node, legacy hardware from a failed neural learning initiative in 2009. To most, it was just a server cluster in the robotics lab. But according to a post-incident memo redacted by the Department of Defense, it had been reactivated once, just once. And the person seen near it that day wasn't a scientist, a teacher, or a visiting engineer. It was Barron Trump. The system's internal clock logged one phrase before going dark. Sentry Ghost, override accepted. Disappearing in plain sight requires more than silence. It demands a system. Sentry Ghost didn't just live under a false name. He operated under a total behavioral suppression doctrine, developed by behavioral analysts embedded within the Presidential Intelligence Shield Unit. The core strategy: minimize external curiosity by maximizing internal dissonance. He was trained to be forgettable, but not absent, present, but non-provocative. No photos, no digital trail, no vocal patterns recorded in public forums. Even his handwriting was deliberately varied across assignments, carefully coached to prevent biometric linkage. The plan worked. For most students, Barron was a rumor with a schedule. A layered firewall existed around his physical routine. Perimeter agents, coded rooks, rotated every 96 hours to prevent pattern formation. Barron never ate on campus, not because of preference, but to avoid edible tracking. A low-tech but effective method used by hostile actors to implant biological traces via consumables. His issued laptop, military-grade, non-commercial, heat-sink embedded, was equipped with WhisperNet, an encrypted OS designed to mimic Windows UI while routing all commands through layered air-gap simulations. Students thought he was typing notes. He wasn't. He was communicating with the grid. To the faculty, he was polite, respectful, exceptionally intelligent, but never expressive. That was intentional. His interactions were timed. 3-second eye contact max, 7-word sentences, never lead group discussions. He followed Rule 43 at all times. Never lead, never follow, always shift. That's how a 6'9" ghost hid in a classroom of 15, until someone noticed and started asking questions. Every Thursday at 0700, a seemingly routine delivery van entered the Oxbridge staff loading dock. The driver wore no uniform, carried no clipboard, just one locked case handcuffed to his wrist. Inside, data cores, encoded in quantum encrypted blocks, each specifically timed for Sentry Ghost's interface. Operation EchoFold had two core goals: deliver updated command protocols, rotate device firmware to stay one step ahead of breach technologies. This wasn't a delivery, it was a rolling black site on wheels. No GPS logs, no manifest. The driver had a level 9 kill clause. If compromised, the entire van would thermally self-eradicate. Once inside the school, Agent Axiom, disguised as a robotics instructor, retrieved the case and performed the swap in a secure chamber below the observatory wing. Barron's device never stayed with him longer than 96 hours. His fingerprints were never stored. The keyboard was reprinted with randomized material identifiers to prevent forensic lift tracking. But the operation didn't end there. At exactly 13:15 hours, synchronized with the class change bell, a passive counter-surveillance sweep was executed across the northwest wing. The sweep checked for wireless sniffers, retinal mapping devices, or unauthorized Bluetooth pairing attempts. Students thought it was just an IT guy resetting Wi-Fi. It wasn't. Barron's walk between classrooms was timed with blind spots in the school's thermal cameras. Blind spots built in intentionally by a compromised infrastructure contractor codenamed Sandbar. Every move, every corridor, every signal hop, planned, timed, disguised, until someone broke rhythm. A classmate paused mid-step and turned back. The breach didn't begin with a hack. It began with a question. A student, Alpha 19, was assigned to Barron's group during an advanced AI theory project. On paper, it was harmless. But Alpha 19 had a background no one expected. Dual citizenship, a parent in aerospace defense, and a quiet obsession with signal anomalies. He wasn't trying to get close. He was trying to understand why the quiet kid never logged into anything. During their second meeting, Barron opened his personal terminal. No username, no OS boot, just a vertical stream of cascading code in cyan. Alpha 19 saw a phrase flash for half a second. Trigger Echo, Delta, execution, ready. He said nothing. But later that night, he tried to reproduce the boot pattern using a mirrored simulation rig at home. Within 6 minutes, the simulation triggered a silent uplink request to a buried satellite node registered to AFSOC 61R, a military relay long thought decommissioned. In less than 30 seconds, 3 IP addresses across Virginia, Tel Aviv, and Brussels lit up. The simulation terminated with an audible click, not from the computer, from his phone. It bricked, SIM card fried, battery melted, silent alert. Somewhere, someone knew the sandbox had been triggered. Back on campus, Barron changed. He started arriving 2 minutes earlier than usual, repeated his hallway path, deliberately walked through camera lines of sight. It was a false pattern injection, a misdirection protocol used by field operatives to flood intel logs with noise. But that meant one thing. He knew he'd been observed. And then, as if on cue, the WhisperNet device went dark, not powered off, shut down from an external command stack. Oxbridge's security grid lit up with a silent code. Sentry Ghost shifting domains. What was coming next wasn't academic. At 0300 hours, 3 unmarked aircraft lifted silently from a secure strip west of Jacksonville. Civilian tracking systems identified them as weather observation drones. They weren't. Each was equipped with XL Falcon Eye systems, real-time aerial pattern recognition, heat-mapped telemetry, and passive electronic sniffing arrays. Their target, a 4-square-mile airspace above Oxbridge Academy. The breach initiated by Alpha 19 wasn't categorized as a cyber incident. It was designated Intelligence Perimeter Compromise, level orange. That meant Sentry Ghost was no longer just a protected asset. He was now a potential exfiltration node. At 0342, Overwatch 2 detected a low-yield frequency pulse radiating from Barron's dorm floor. Class 4 non-terrestrial signal drift, bouncing off an orbital satellite not registered with U.S. Space Command logs. The trajectory aligned with the last known signal from Trigger Echo Delta, which meant one thing: someone, or something, was trying to connect. Tactical Air Control activated Ground Asset R9, a covert Humvee rig outfitted with anti-emission suppression towers, disguised as a landscaping vehicle parked outside Oxbridge's northeast gate. Its job: jam everything without alerting anyone. Inside the school, the students still slept. Barron didn't. At 0349, security footage, time-stamped but scrubbed from live feeds, showed him standing alone in the physics lab. He wasn't moving. He wasn't speaking, just staring directly at a mounted camera. And for the first time in over 3 years, he spoke aloud to no one. "I understand, but not here." 10 seconds later, the feed cut. 3 drones circled in tighter. R9 deployed pulse dampeners, and somewhere above Florida, an unmarked signal satellite changed course. They didn't send a team through the front door. They disassembled the walls, digitally. At 0420, a multi-node cyber strike was deployed from a floating joint operations rig stationed in the Gulf of Mexico. Call sign: Shadow Net Blue. Its mission: disable any third-party surveillance nodes piggybacking on the Oxbridge academic infrastructure. Foreign code, ghost processors, orphaned pings. Over 3,000 anomalous access attempts had been logged over the last 18 months. Most were benign. 2 were not. Both originated from Langfang, China, and Nems, Romania, regions known for running ghost ops under the guise of academic exchanges. The targets weren't systems. They were watchers, silent readers, tapping into Sentry Ghost's telemetry through backdoor fiber taps buried beneath school utility lines. They never triggered an alarm because the alarms were taught not to look for them. Shadow Net Blue initiated a sweep using codeless destructs, fragments that mimicked student metadata but delivered recursive memory loops that wiped the watcher's ability to distinguish what was real and what was timestamp noise. By 0431, all 3 foreign signatures went offline. Inside the school, the Wi-Fi died for 9 seconds. Only 9. Just enough to force a sync reset on all personal devices, including the one used by Alpha 19. But one device never reset: Barron's. Instead, it executed a cold boot sequence traced to Sevcon 9, an off-grid relay system believed dismantled in 2011. No login, no prompt, just a phrase on the internal diagnostic screen: Echo Delta suppression confirmed. The walls fell quietly, and now the real strike could begin. 0515 hours. The sun hadn't risen, but the school's east wing lit up, not with light, but with invisible convergence. All campus entry points registered 0 motion, yet motion sensors tripped in sequence. Not a breach. A patterned movement algorithm, mimicking a student's footsteps, bouncing through hallways with surgical precision. At 0517, the physics lab, ground zero of Sentry Ghost's last known position, unlocked without a physical touch. The lock blinked once, then reset. Inside, the terminal connected to the lab's decommissioned Tesla coil began humming at 0.3 Hz, interfacing with Barron's WhisperNet device across the air. This wasn't about data anymore. It was about positional authority. From an aerial perspective, 3 drones formed a triangle above the structure. Within that triangle, Barron stood directly in center mass, flanked by Agent Axiom and an unknown third party, female, mid-30s, no facial ID match across federal systems. The footage didn't record her arrival, only her presence. At 0522, a directed signal beam was fired from Overwatch 3, encoded to disrupt local electromagnetic fields and force a data purge if active connections were detected. The signal passed through the lab. Nothing happened. Then, Barron turned, facing the camera, and held up the WhisperNet device, still powered on. A screen capture caught the frame just before impact. No static, no error. Just a clean, unbroken line of text. Frame complete. Authority. Transfer. Stand by. Every camera in the building shorted out at once. Outside, R9's suppression unit melted down without cause. The unknown woman vanished from thermal view, and from the edge of the school roof, one figure, tall, silent, watched the drones pull away, then disappeared before the infrared system reset. By 0610 hours, Command at ShadowNet Blue declared a containment lockout. The primary strike had failed, not because it missed, but because the objective was never physical. Barron Trump, Sentry Ghost, had executed a handoff. But what exactly had been handed off? Operation teams initiated a ghost sweep, a protocol designed to trace any surviving code signatures, digital fingerprints, or redirected packets from the frame event. They found none. No metadata, no residual data trails. Even the WhisperNet device, recovered hours later in the robotics wing ceiling, had been wiped to factory baseline, except one file, a single .bin shell, hex-inscribed, compressed. When decrypted, it contained just 2 words, "He knows." Meanwhile, 2 unregistered cell pings left Palm Beach airspace and hit towers in Zurich and Singapore, both tied to international cyberbanking nodes. The theory? The frame event wasn't just an upload. It was a transfer of access, possibly to funds, possibly to systems, possibly to names. And then, just as fast as it began, Sentry Ghost vanished from all known logs. No departure, no return, no trace. By 0700, Oxbridge Academy resumed classes like nothing had happened. Students trickled in, unaware that a Black Ops team had packed up before first period. No sirens, no headlines. Just a few reset routers and a missing chair in physics class. Barron Trump never returned. Alpha 19 transferred without notice, no transcript, no forwarding address. His dorm was cleared and repainted within 48 hours. But in a Senate subcommittee on classified education infrastructure held weeks later, one memo, obtained through back-channel leaks, included a single note scribbled in the margin beside a heavily redacted paragraph. Subject 47. Initiated self-eclipse protocol. Silence confirmed. Frame complete. Await trigger, Delta 2. No further clarification. No official statement. Just a quiet agreement among those in the room. Whatever Barron Trump became, whoever he is now, he's not waiting to be found. He's waiting to be activated. And this time, we won't see him coming.